Welcome back, everyone. Before we dive in, make sure you drop your thoughts and the lessons you took from this story in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's get into it. My name is Desmond Walker, and I am 34 years old. I was finishing up some paperwork on my dining room table when my phone buzzed. My wife Latoya's name lit up the screen, and I figured she was calling to tell me about her day at the conference in Denver. 3 days in Colorado for some corporate training program. I picked up on the second ring and held the phone between my shoulder and ear while I signed the last page of a quarterly report. "Hey, how is it going?" I asked. There was a pause. Not the usual comfortable silence we sometimes shared, but something heavier, stretched tight like a wire. "We need to talk," she said. Those 4 words never lead anywhere good. I set down my pen and leaned back in my chair, staring at the framed photo of us on the wall. "Okay," I said. "What is on your mind?" There was another pause. I could hear hotel noise in the background, doors closing, distant footsteps, a television murmuring from another room. Someone laughed in the hallway, and an elevator chimed. "I met someone here," Latoya said finally. "At the conference." My stomach dropped, but I kept my voice steady, clamping down on the instinctive wave of dread. "Met someone," I repeated. "How?" "We have been spending time together. Talking." "It is complicated," she said. "Complicated," I echoed. I almost laughed, but it came out more like a breath. "How complicated are we talking here, exactly?" "We are in a situationship," she said, like that explained everything. "A situationship," I said. I had to process that for a moment. Here I was thinking we were married, and apparently we were just in some undefined gray area that could accommodate her conference romance. "While we are married?" I asked. "It is not that simple," Latoya said quickly. "These things happen. Feelings develop. I cannot control how I feel about someone." I stood up and walked to the window. Outside, our quiet Houston neighborhood moved along like normal. A man jogged past with his dog. A delivery truck eased down the street. People were living their regular lives, completely unaware that my marriage was unraveling over a phone call. "So let me get this straight," I said. "You met someone 3 days ago, and now you are in a relationship with him while you are married to me." "It is not a relationship exactly," she said. "It is more fluid. We are exploring what this could be." "Fluid. Exploring," I said. The words sounded like they belonged in some self-help book, not in a conversation with my wife of 6 years. "And you called to tell me this because—" I asked. "Because I believe in honesty," Latoya said. "I did not want to lie to you." The irony was not lost on me. She did not want to lie, but apparently she had no problem betraying me as long as it had a trendy name and an explanation she liked. "How considerate of you," I said. "Do not be sarcastic," she snapped. "This is hard for me too." Hard for her. I was sure it was really difficult having romantic dinners in Denver while I was home paying our bills and wondering why she had not called yesterday. "So what happens now?" I asked. "I do not know," she said. "I need time to figure this out, to see where this goes. While staying married to me," I said. "I'm not asking you to make any decisions right now. I just wanted you to know what is happening." I looked at our wedding photo on my desk. 2 people under an arch of white flowers, smiling like they knew what forever meant. I remembered the sound of applause, the warmth of her fingers squeezing mine as we walked back down the aisle. "I appreciate the heads up," I said. "When are you getting back?" "I will be home tomorrow evening," Latoya said. "We can talk more then. Figure out how to handle this." "Handle this," I repeated, like it was a scheduling conflict instead of her choosing someone else. "Sure," I said. "We will talk when you get back." "I love you," she said softly. "This does not change that." I hung up without responding. I stood there for a moment, the silence settling over the house like dust, then sat back down and stared at the paperwork I had been doing. Quarterly reports that suddenly seemed completely meaningless. My phone buzzed with a text from Latoya, but I did not look at it. Instead, I opened my laptop and started searching for divorce lawyers in Houston. The next morning, I called in sick to work, not because I was actually ill, but because I had more important things to handle. I had spent half the night researching divorce attorneys and the other half staring at the ceiling, wondering how someone could throw away 6 years of marriage for a 3-day conference fling. By 9 in the morning, I was sitting in the office of Leonard Hayes, a divorce attorney whose name kept popping up in my online searches. Leonard's office was on the 20th floor of a glass building downtown, all polished wood, framed degrees, and understated success. Leonard himself was in his late 40s, with calm eyes and a voice that sounded like he had seen everything and nothing surprised him anymore. "So she told you about this situationship?" he asked, looking over the notes I'd written down. I had come in with bullet points, dates, and phrases she had used, like I was prepping for a performance review. "That is what she called it," I said. "Apparently, it means she can have her cake and eat it too." Leonard nodded slowly. "I have seen this before," he said. "People use modern terminology to make old-fashioned cheating sound progressive." He leaned forward and tapped his pen against the legal pad. "The good news is, if you want to move forward, we can have papers ready by tomorrow." "That fast?" I asked. "Adultery is adultery, regardless of what you call it," Leonard said. "And she confessed to it voluntarily. That makes our job easier. We will file for dissolution, request temporary restraints on joint accounts, and make sure you are financially protected." I hesitated for a moment, then asked, "Do you ever see people come back from something like this?" Leonard watched me for a second. "Sometimes," he said, "but usually only when both people are willing to take responsibility and do the work." That does not sound like what she is asking for. I took a long breath, feeling something settle in my chest. "She made her choice," I said. "I might as well make mine." Leonard slid the retainer agreement across the desk. I signed it, the pen feeling heavier than it should. When I walked out of his office, I had a plan. Papers would be ready by late afternoon the next day. Perfect timing for LaToya's arrival home. My next stop was the bank. I sat across from a polite representative who smiled, as if we were discussing vacation plans instead of the early stages of a divorce. I withdrew enough cash to cover immediate expenses and opened a separate checking account in my name only. Everything was legal, everything by the book. I was not trying to hide assets, just protecting myself from any surprises LaToya might have planned. After the bank, I stepped outside into the bright Houston heat and called my friend Reggie Moore. We had gone to college together, played pickup basketball on weekends, and stayed close even as our lives diverged. He answered on the first ring. "Desmond, man, what is up?" Reggie said. "I was just thinking I have not heard from you in a minute." "I need a favor," I said. "Can you help me move some boxes tomorrow evening?" "Moving boxes?" Reggie asked. "You finally buying that house on the north side? You and LaToya leveling up?" "Not exactly," I said. I leaned against my car and stared at my reflection in the window, try to keep my voice even. "I will explain when I see you." Reggie was quiet for a second. "All right," he said. "You sound serious. Text me the time, and I will bring the truck." That afternoon, I went through LaToya's social media. I opened her photo feed with the kind of detachment people use to examine accident scenes. There she was at the conference, smiling in group pictures, posing with coworkers, standing on a balcony with mountains behind her. And there he was in several of the photos, a man I did not know, standing close, his hand on her lower back, both of them looking very comfortable with each other. In one picture, they were seated at a restaurant table, leaning toward each other. LaToya's eyes were bright in a way I had not seen in months. The comments from her colleagues were telling. Hearts, fire emojis, and messages like, "You two are so cute together," and "I see you, LaToya." I screenshotted everything and dropped the images into a folder on my laptop. Leonard had said documentation would be helpful. With her confession, it was probably unnecessary, but I wanted the truth written somewhere other than my memory. By evening, I had everything organized in the house. I pulled fresh sheets on a guest bed, set out an extra set of towels, and dragged LaToya's large suitcase down from the closet shelf she kept it on. Then I took a mental inventory of which belongings were definitely hers. Clothes, shoes, books, artwork she had chosen, and that expensive single-serve coffee maker her sister Tanisha had given her for Christmas. I ordered a bundle of moving boxes online for expedited delivery and stacked a few I had in the garage by the door. My phone had been buzzing all day with texts from LaToya. Updates about the conference. Pictures of her meals. A photo of the mountains near the hotel. Little messages that felt like she was trying to maintain normalcy while completely destroying our marriage in the background. "Long day, but the training is really good," she wrote at one point. "You would like the presenter. Very funny. Sound great," I replied. Later she sent a photo of a steak dinner with the caption, "Best meal of the trip so far." "Nice picture," I typed. "Have fun." Around 10 that night, the last text came. "Cannot wait to see you tomorrow. Miss you." I set the phone aside without responding. Miss me? While exploring a fluid connection with a conference guy. The audacity was almost impressive. I spent the rest of the evening going through her joint accounts, making sure I understood exactly what needed to be separated. Credit cards, streaming services, insurance policies, a mortgage. Marriage ties people together in ways that go far beyond love and vows. It creates a web of financial connections that need to be carefully untangled. Sometime around midnight, I ended up on the floor with our wedding album open in front of me. I was not looking through it for nostalgia. I was trying to figure out when things had changed. When had the woman who promised to love me through everything decide that promises could be fluid too? In one picture, LaToya was laughing with her head thrown back as we danced at the reception. In another, my mother was wiping her eyes while my father pretended not to notice he was doing the same. At the back of the album, tucked into the sleeve, was a handwritten note LaToya had given me the morning of our wedding. Desmond, it said, I promise to choose you every day, even when it is hard. I stared at the line for a long moment, then closed the album and slid it into a cardboard box. I pulled out a marker and wrote her name across the top in large letters. Tomorrow was going to be an interesting evening. The next day went by like a perfectly choreographed operation. I moved through the motions without pausing long enough to fall apart. Leonard called me late in the afternoon. Desmond, it is Leonard. The papers are ready, he said. Do you want to pick them up? Or should I have them delivered to your house? I will come get them, I said. I drove downtown and sat across from Leonard again while he walked me through each document. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Financial disclosures. A temporary restraining order on joint accounts, so neither of us could suddenly drain anything out of spite or panic. Everything we had discussed, clean, thorough, and absolutely final once signed and processed. You sure about this? Leonard asked, watching my face as I flipped through the pages. I ran my thumb along the edge of the papers. She made her choice 3 days ago, I said quietly. I am just making mine official. Leonard nodded. Sign where I'm marked. The rest is on me, he said. I signed, my name flowing across line after line, each signature another step away from the life I'd thought I would have. By early evening, Reggie arrived with his pickup truck. I had already pulled out all the boxes and had most of LaToya's belongings sorted. Her clothes, personal items, shoes, jewelry organizers, and stacks of self-help books about communication and growth. Man, this is heavy, Reggie said as he lifted a box packed with her shoes. You want to tell me what happened? Or are we just pretending you suddenly got obsessed with minimalist living? I took a breath. She decided our marriage was not exclusive enough for her taste, I said. Reggie stopped mid-lift and stared at me. What? She called me from Denver yesterday, I said. Apparently, she is in a situationship with someone from her conference. Reggie blinked. And what? A situationship, I said. Her word, not mine. She is exploring something fluid with him and want to be honest about it. So she is cheating, Reggie said flatly. Pretty much, I said. Reggie shook his head slowly. You good? He asked. No, I said honestly, but I will be. We worked efficiently after that. Reggie did not ask many questions, which I appreciated. The silence between us felt solid and supportive, like a wall I could lean against if I needed to. By about 7 in the evening, everything of LaToya's was packed and stacked neatly by the front door. Her suitcase sat on top, ready for immediate departure. The living room looked different, but not empty, more like it had been edited, trimmed down to only what truly belonged. I changed the locks while Reggie went to pick up takeout from a place down the street. A simple deadbolt replacement that took about 20 minutes. I was not locking LaToya out permanently, just ensuring she could not walk in like nothing had happened. When Reggie came back with food, he watched me test the new key in the lock. You know she's going to lose it when she sees this, he said. Probably, I said. But that is what happens when you blow up your own life and expect everyone else to handle the rubble. We sat at the kitchen table, eating in companionable silence. Every now and then, Reggie would glance at the boxes, then at me, like he was checking to make sure I was still breathing. So when does she land? Reggie asked eventually. Her last text said around 9:30 tonight, I said. He nodded. You want me to stay? I thought about it. Part of me wanted backup, but another part knew this was something I needed to face alone. No, I said. I appreciate it, but I have to do this myself. Reggie nodded, then reached across the table and squeezed my shoulder. "Call me if you need anything," he said. "I mean that." Around 8 that evening, I got a text from Latoya, landing in about 30 minutes. "Cannot wait to be home," she wrote. Home. Interesting choice of word for someone who had spent the past few days exploring other options. "See you soon," I replied. Reggie left around 8:30 after helping me move a few pieces of furniture to fill the spaces where Latoya's things had been. A bookshelf shifted, a lamp moved, a plant relocated. Small adjustments, but the house already looked less like ours and more like mine. At 9:15, I heard a car pull into the driveway. Headlights slid across the living room wall. I sat at the kitchen table with the divorce papers in front of me and waited. Latoya tried her key first. I heard the rattle at the door, then a pause, then the sound of her trying again more forcefully. After a minute, there was a knock. I opened the door and stepped aside. Latoya rolled her suitcase over the threshold, looking tired from travel. Her hair was pulled back, and there were faint shadows under her eyes. She smiled when she saw me. "Hey," she said. "My key does not work. Did something happen with the lock?" That was when she noticed the boxes. Her smile faded as her gaze moved from the stacked boxes by the door to the papers on the kitchen table, then back to me. "What is all this?" Latoya asked. "Your things," I said simply. She walked over to the table and looked down at the documents. I watched her face change as she read the heading on the top page. "Petition for dissolution of marriage," she read aloud. "You filed for divorce yesterday, right after our conversation. You said you needed time to figure things out," I said. "You figured it out in Denver. I'm just catching up." Latoya sat down heavily in the chair across from me. She stared at the papers like they might rearrange themselves into something less final if she waited long enough. "This is not what I wanted," she said quietly. "What did you want?" I asked. "To keep me on standby while you explored your situationship." "It is not like that," she said. "Then explain it to me," I said. "Use small words so I can understand how being married to me, while being romantically involved with someone else, is not exactly like that." She was quiet for a long moment, her fingers curled around the edge of the table. "I thought you would be more understanding," Latoya said finally. "Understanding of what?" I asked. "That you met someone and decided our marriage vows were more like guidelines." "People grow apart," she said. "Feelings change. I was trying to be honest with you." "Honest," I repeated. "Honest would have been talking to me before you started your romance in Denver. What you gave me was not honesty. It was notification." Latoya looked around the room, really seeing the changes for the first time. The missing artwork, the open spaces on the shelves, the bare section of countertop where her coffee machine had been. "You packed everything," she said. "Everything that is yours," I said. "I was very careful not to take anything that belongs to you." "Where am I supposed to go?" she asked. I pulled out my phone and turned the screen toward her. I had taken a screenshot of the website for a nearby, extended stay hotel earlier that day. "I took the liberty of checking availability," I said. "They have weekly and monthly rates if you need time to make more permanent arrangements." Latoya stared at me like she had never seen me before. "You have this all figured out," she said. "One of us had to," I replied. She stared at the divorce papers for what felt like 10 minutes, but was probably only 2. I could see her thoughts racing, the panic creeping into her expression as she realized her carefully planned revelation had not gone according to script. "This is insane," Latoya said. "You cannot just end a 6-year marriage because I was honest with you about having feelings for someone." "I'm not ending it because you were honest," I said. "I'm ending it because you decided to start a second relationship and gave it a cute name." "It is not an affair," she said sharply. "We have not even," she trailed off. "Have not even what?" I asked. "Slept together? Is that the line you think matters here?" She shifted in her chair. "We connected emotionally," Latoya said. "Sometimes that just happens." "While you're married," I said. "To me, that is called cheating, regardless of which emotions got involved." Latoya stood up and started pacing, her heels clicking softly on the hardwood floor. "You are being incredibly rigid about this," she said. "Relationships evolve. People can have meaningful connections with multiple people." I almost laughed. "Are you seriously trying to sell me on polyamory right now?" I asked. "I'm trying to explain that love is not always neat and simple," she said. "When I met Eric." "Eric," I said, leaning back in my chair. "So we are naming him now. Tell me about Eric." Her face flushed slightly. He is intelligent, she said. Funny. We spend hours talking about everything. Work, life, dreams. Things we never talk about anymore. When is the last time you tried to have one of those conversations with me? I asked. That is not the point, she said quickly. That is exactly the point, I said. You stopped investing in our marriage months ago. You found someone new to invest in instead, and now you want credit for being honest about it. I want credit for trying to handle this maturely instead of sneaking around, LaToya said. I told you the truth. You told me after you had already decided to pursue him, I said. That is not maturity. That is damage control. So what? She asked. You're going to throw away everything we built together because I had feelings for someone else? I'm not throwing anything away, I said. You already did that. I'm just cleaning up the mess. LaToya walked over to one of the boxes and opened it. She pulled out a framed photo of us from our honeymoon, standing on a beach with our feet in the water. Remember this? She asked. Remember how happy we were? I remember thinking I was marrying someone who knew what marriage meant, I said. People change, she said. They grow. I am not the same person I was 6 years ago. Clearly not, I said. The person I married would not have started a romantic relationship with someone else and expected me to be understanding about it. LaToya set the photo down and looked at me, her eyes shining with something that might have been desperation. What if I ended it? She asked. What if I told Eric this was a mistake and we worked on our marriage instead? You would do that? I asked. Just turn off your feelings for him because I'm not okay with sharing you. If that is what it takes to save our marriage, yes, she said. I studied her face. You do not mean that, I said. You are just scared because this is not playing out the way you imagined. Of course I am scared, she said. I am about to lose my husband over a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding, I repeated. You think I misunderstood something about you being in a situationship with Eric? I think you are overreacting to something that does not have to destroy us, LaToya said. We could go to counseling. We could talk about why I felt disconnected. We could have done all of that before you started falling in love with someone else, I said. You had options that did not involve starting a new relationship. I walked to the window. Outside, our neighbor Mrs. Jenkins was watering the flowers along her front walkway, the same way she did almost every evening. The sight felt strangely grounding, like proof that the world was still turning even while mine was splitting in half. Let me ask you something, I said without turning around. If I had called you from a business trip and told you I had met someone, that I was exploring a connection with her, how would you have reacted? The silence stretched on long enough that I turned back to look at LaToya. That is different, she said finally. Ow, I asked. Because you would not do that, she said. Why not? I asked. According to you, feelings just happen. People connect. Relationships evolve. You are being ridiculous, she said. I am using your own logic, I said. If it is acceptable for you to explore meaningful connections with other people while you are married to me, why would it not be acceptable for me to do the same? She did not answer, and her silence was an answer all by itself. Here's what I think happened, I said. You got bored with routine. Eric made you feel excited again. And instead of bringing that energy home to work on us, you decided to keep both options open. I continued. Now you are upset because I am not playing along with your backup plan. That is not true, she said. I never thought of you as a backup plan. Then why are you here, trying to negotiate, instead of in Denver with Eric? I asked. If he is such an amazing connection, why are you not pursuing that instead of trying to keep me around? Her phone buzzed on the table. The screen lit up with a text, and I could clearly see the name, Eric, before she flipped it face down. He is texting you, I observed, probably wondering how the conversation with your husband is going. It is not like that, LaToya said quickly. Show me the message, I said. That is private, she said. So are the messages between me and my wife, I said. But apparently privacy does not mean much to you anymore. LaToya picked up her phone and held it against her chest. I'm not going to let you invade my privacy just because you are angry, she said. Privacy, I repeated. Interesting concept coming from someone who wants to maintain romantic relationships with two different men at the same time. I never said I wanted to maintain both relationships, she said. You never said you did not either, I replied. In fact, you said you needed time to figure out where things with Eric might go. That sounds a lot like wanting to keep your options open. She slumped back into the chair, looking exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with her flight. I do not know what I want, Latoya said. This whole situation is confusing. It is really not that complicated, I said. You want Eric? Go be with Eric. You want to work on our marriage? Cut contact with Eric and commit to rebuilding what you damaged. But you do not get both. And if I choose you, she asked, you will just forget this ever happened? I looked at the divorce papers on the table. I will never forget that when our marriage started feeling boring, your solution was to start shopping for a replacement, I said. Trust does not magically reappear because you change your mind about which option you prefer. Her phone buzzed again. Then again. I could see her jaw tense each time the screen lit up. Finally, she turned the phone completely off and set it face down on the table. There, Latoya said. Happy now. Turning off your phone does not make Eric disappear, I said. It just means you're avoiding the conversation you need to have with him. What conversation is that? She asked dully. The one where you tell him whether you're leaving your husband for him or staying married and cutting contact, I said. You know, basic adult decision-making. She rubbed her temples like she had a headache. This is all happening too fast, she said. I need time to think. You have had 3 days to think, I said. 3 days of romantic dinners and meaningful conversations with Eric while I was here believing I was in a committed marriage. How much more thinking time do you need? I was not trying to hurt you, Latoya said. But you did hurt me, I said. And now you're trying to minimize it by saying it was not intentional. Like that changes anything. She looked around the room again, taking in every empty space where something of hers had been. Where did you put my coffee machine? She asked quietly. Box 3, I said, along with all the specialty pods you spent $80 on last month. I cannot believe you packed everything, she said. I cannot believe you thought I would not, I said. Latoya stood up and walked into the kitchen, opening cabinets and drawers like she was confirming I had actually followed through. It is like I never lived here, she said when she came back. That was the point, I said. You were being cruel, she said. I'm being efficient, I said. You made your choice. I'm helping you follow through with it. She came back to the table and sank into the chair again, shoulders slumped. What if I made a mistake? Latoya asked. What if I was just confused and overwhelmed? Then you learned something important about yourself, I said. Some people get overwhelmed and talk to their spouse about it. Others start situationships with strangers at conferences. Now you know which type you are. God, you are cold, she said. I am protecting myself, I replied. There is a difference. Her phone suddenly lit up and vibrated even though she had turned it off. Someone was calling persistently enough to trigger the emergency bypass setting. She glanced at the screen, and her expression shifted. It is my sister, Latoya said. Tanisha. Answer it, I said. You do not mind? She asked. Why would I mind? I asked. Your family is going to find out about this eventually. Might as well start now. Latoya answered on the 4th ring. Hey, Tanisha, she said. I could hear Tanisha's excited voice faintly from where I sat, asking about the conference, asking if Latoya was tired, asking if we were still coming to a family cookout next month. Latoya held the phone away from her ear for a second and looked at me apologetically. No, I just got home, she said into the phone. Actually, Tanisha, something has happened. Can I call you back later? There was more chatter from the other end, questions tumbling over each other. It is complicated, Latoya said. I will explain everything later. I promise. She hung up and immediately started typing a text, letting her know you were getting divorced. I asked, asking if I can stay there tonight. Latoya said. Good plan, I said. The hotel might be expensive long term. She finished typing and set the phone down. Tanisha wants to know what happened, Latoya said. What should I tell her? The truth would be a novel approach, I said. The truth is complicated, she protested. No, it is not, I said. You had an affair, and I filed for divorce. That is the truth. I did not have an affair, she said. I had feelings for someone and acted on those feelings while married to me. I added, what would you call that? She was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. I would call it the biggest mistake of my life, she said softly. Now we are getting somewhere, I said. Her phone buzzed with a response from Tanisha. She read it and sighed. She says I can stay as long as I need to, Latoya said. But she wants a full story tomorrow. Tanisha always was the smart one in your family, I said. Latoya gave a humorless little laugh. She's going to ask questions I do not know how to answer, she said. Like what? I asked. Like why I threw away a good marriage for someone I barely know, she said quietly. That is a fair question, I said. What is your answer going to be? Latoya looked at me with something that finally resembled genuine regret. I do not have one, she said. I honestly do not know why I did this. Maybe because you stopped appreciating what you had and started fantasizing about what you might be missing, I said. Maybe, she whispered. Or maybe because you wanted the excitement of something new without giving up the security of something established, I added. She winced. That makes me sound terrible, she said. It makes you sound human, I said. Selfish, but human. So there is really no way to fix this, Latoya said. I walked over to the table and picked up the divorce papers, weighing them in my hand. You could have fixed it by talking to me when you started feeling disconnected, I said. You could have fixed it by putting energy into our marriage instead of into Eric. You could have fixed it by coming home and having an honest conversation instead of calling to announce your situationship. I set the papers back down. But you cannot fix it now, I said. Now you would just be choosing me because I am not tolerating your other choice. That is not healing anything. That is settling for your backup plan once your first option became inconvenient. Latoya started to cry, quietly at first, then steadily, tears tracking down her cheeks. I really ruined this, did I not? She asked. Completely, I said. And you're not going to give me another chance, she said. What would that look like? I asked. You promised to stop talking to Eric. I pretend to trust you again. We both hope you do not meet another exciting stranger at the next conference. That is not a marriage. That is a countdown. It will not be like that, she said weakly. How do you know? I asked. 3 days ago, you would have said cheating on me would not be like you either. Latoya wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I'm going to regret this for the rest of my life, she said. Probably, I said. But that is what consequences are for. We started loading her things into her car. I helped her carry the boxes, not out of kindness, but because I wanted them gone. With each trip to the driveway, the house felt more like mine and less like ours. When we loaded the last box, Latoya closed the trunk and turned to me in the driveway. The porch light cast soft shadows across her face, making her look younger and more fragile than she had in years. What happens now? She asked. Now you figure out your life without me in it, I said. And I figure out mine without you and Eric. What if nothing works out? She asked. What if I end up alone? Then you still have to live with your choices, I said. Just like I have to live with mine. And you and I, she asked carefully. There is no version where we find our way back to each other. That version disappeared when you called from Denver, I said. You just did not notice it right away. Latoya opened the driver's side door and rolled the window down. I want you to know that I did love you, she said. I still do. I believe you, I said. But love is not enough when it comes with footnotes and exceptions. She looked at me for a long moment, like she wanted to say something else but could not find the words. Then she nodded once, put the car in gear, and drove away. I stood in the driveway and watched her tail lights disappear around the corner. After 6 years, it was over just like that. No screaming, no dramatic scene, just paperwork, boxes, and a car turning out of the neighborhood. I went back inside and locked the new deadbolt. The house was quiet in a way it had not been for months. Not an empty quiet, but a peaceful one, like I could finally breathe all the way to the bottom of my lungs again. My phone buzzed with a text from Reggie. How did it go? He asked. Better than expected. I typed back. Thanks for the help. Anytime, he replied. You okay? I looked around the living room, already mentally rearranging furniture to fill the spaces where her things used to be. Yeah, I wrote. I think I actually am. 3 months later, I was sitting in Leonard Hayes' office again, this time for the final signature on the divorce decree. Everything had proceeded smoothly. No contested assets. No drawn-out negotiations. Latoya had signed everything without argument, which surprised me until I heard through mutual friends that she and Eric had made their relationship official and that she had moved to Denver to be with him. Apparently, the long-distance thing had been too complicated for their situationship, so she quit her job in Houston and accepted a position there. I had not asked for details. The information came in pieces, from a coworker who still followed her online, from a neighbor who ran into her sister, from a cousin who saw a relocation post. That is it, Leonard said, sliding the stamped papers across his desk toward me. You are officially single again. I flipped through the documents one last time, more out of habit than necessity. How does it feel? Leonard asked. Like I should have done this months ago, I said. And I meant it. Not everyone handles things as decisively as you did, Leonard said. Most people second-guess themselves for a long time. I did my second-guessing during those last months of our marriage, I said. This part is just follow-through. The past 3 months have been the most peaceful I had felt in over a year. No more walking on eggshells around LaToya's moods. No more wondering why she seemed distant or irritated by small things. No more making excuses for why she did not seem interested in spending time together. All the red flags I had been ignoring for months suddenly made perfect sense in hindsight. I threw myself into work at first, taking on extra projects and staying late just to fill the silence. But eventually, the silence stopped feeling heavy and started feeling like space. I started running again, early in the morning before the heat settled in, letting the rhythm of my footsteps steady my thoughts. I learned to cook properly instead of relying on takeout, discovering that I actually enjoyed it. One Saturday, I painted the living room a deep blue I'd always liked, but never suggested because LaToya preferred beige and compromises. As the new color dried on the walls, the room looked fully mine for the first time. The house started to feel like home again, not the home we had built together, but the one I was building for myself. My phone had been mercifully quiet regarding drama from LaToya's side. She did not call. She did not text. Every now and then, I would see her name flash briefly across a social media update from someone else, and then it would disappear again. I let it. The only direct contact from her family came from Tanisha, exactly 2 weeks after LaToya left. I just want to understand what happened, Tanisha said when I answered. LaToya's version does not make much sense. What did she tell you? I asked. That you two grew apart and decided to divorce, Tanisha said. But that does not explain why she moved to Denver or why everything happened so fast. I took a slow breath. Do you want the real story? I asked. Yes, Tanisha said. Please. So I told her. I gave her the facts without adding anger or commentary. LaToya's phone call from Denver. The situationship. The emotional connection with Eric. The conversation at the house. The boxes. The divorce papers. Tanisha listened without interrupting. When I finished, there was a long pause. I am really sorry, she said quietly. I thought I knew my sister better than that. People surprise us sometimes, I said. Not usually in ways that blow up their entire life, Tanisha said. She had everything she said she wanted. A stable marriage. A home. Someone who loved her. I cannot explain why she did what she did, I said. You will have to ask her. I will, Tanisha said. But I wanted you to know that not everyone in our family thinks this is your fault. I appreciate that, I said. That was the last time I heard directly from LaToya's family. I assumed they were processing their own disappointment in her choices. A few days after signing the final papers, I met Reggie for lunch at a small place near my office. We slid into a booth, and he watched me for a moment while I opened my menu. All right, Reggie said. Now that the ink is dry, when are you going to start dating again? Eventually, I said. That is not an answer, he replied. It is the only answer I have right now, I said. I'm not in a hurry to jump back into something serious. I'm not talking about serious, Reggie said. I'm talking about getting back out there, having some fun, meeting people, remembering you were still alive. I thought about it while I worked on my burger. The truth was, I felt better about myself than I had in years. More confident, more settled, clearer about what I wanted from my life. But I was not naive enough to think I was ready to trust someone else with my heart just yet. I'm good where I am for now, I said finally. I'm focused on building my own life again. Reggie nodded. Fair enough, he said. Just do not become one of those guys who swears off relationships forever because one woman hurt him. I'm not swearing off anything, I said. I'm just going to be very selective about who gets access to my peace of mind. Reggie smiled. That is actually pretty mature, he said. I am proud of you, man. I know that was brutal. When I got home that afternoon, there was an envelope in my mailbox with no return address. The handwriting on the front was familiar. I stood on the porch for a moment, just looking at it, then went inside and opened it at the kitchen counter. Inside was a single sheet of paper. A handwritten note from LaToya. Desmond, it began. I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from, but I wanted you to know that Eric and I broke up last week. Turns out a relationship built on betraying someone else does not have the strongest foundation. Who would have thought? I read on. I'm not writing to ask for anything or to try to fix what I broke, Latoya had written. I just wanted to apologize for being so selfish and short-sighted. You deserve better than what I gave you. I hope you find someone who appreciates what I was too immature to value. I hope you are happy. I read the letter again, slower this time, waiting for anger or satisfaction or some sharp feeling to rise up. But there was nothing. No vindication that things with Eric had not worked out. No temptation to reach out and commiserate. No fresh wave of hurt. Just nothing. Which, I realized, was its own kind of progress. I folded the note and slipped it into the kitchen drawer where I kept random papers I might need someday, but probably would not. A takeout menu. An appliance warranty. A dentist appointment reminder. Latoya's letter fit there better than it fit anywhere else in my life. That evening, I called my mother to let her know the divorce had been finalized. She had been supportive throughout the whole process, but I knew she was disappointed. She had liked Latoya. She had been looking forward to grandchildren. She had probably imagined holiday gatherings that would now never happen. "How are you doing with all this?" my mother asked. Her voice was warm and steady, the same way it had been when I was a child and scraped my knee on the sidewalk. "Better than I expected," I said. "Different than I planned, but better than I expected." "Good," she said. "You know your father and I support whatever makes you happy." "I know," I said. "Thank you. And, honey," she added, "do not let this make you cynical about love. What happened with Latoya says more about her character than it does about marriage or relationships in general." I smiled, even though she cannot see it. "I will not," I said. "I promise." "Your father wanted me to remind you that you still owe him a rematch in dominoes," she said, her tone lightening a little. "He says you cheated last time." "I did not cheat," I said, laughing for the first time that day. "I just beat him." "Well, you want a chance to fix that," she said. "Come over this weekend if you feel up to it." After I hung up, I looked around my living room now, and realized she was right. I was not cynical about love. I was just more careful now about who I chose to love and more aware of the difference between someone who truly loved me and someone who loved the idea of me as a safety net. 6 months earlier, I had thought I was in a solid marriage. I would have told anyone who asked that Latoya and I were fine, just busy, just stressed, just going through a phase. I had believed our vows still meant what we said they meant. Today, I was officially divorced. And to my surprise, I was genuinely okay with it. That night, I opened a beer and settled onto my couch to watch a movie I'd wanted to see for months, but Latoya had never been interested. It was a small freedom, but it felt bigger than it should have, as if choosing a movie without compromising was proof that my life belonged entirely to me again. Outside, I could hear Mrs. Jenkins in her garden, humming softly as she trimmed plants along the walkway. Normal evening activities for normal people dealing with normal problems. The difference was, now I felt like one of those normal people again, instead of someone silently pretending his marriage was not falling apart. It had taken me 34 years to learn that sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself is refuse to accept unacceptable behavior, even from people you love, especially from people you love. The movie started. I leaned back against my couch now, and let the quiet, uncomplicated peace of the evening settle around me like a soft blanket. For the first time in a long time, the life I was living felt completely and undeniably like my own. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, and share this video with your friends. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a powerful story drop.